Welcome to the RAG Podcast, the weekly show where I interview recruitment owners who are prepared to tell their unique story of growth. This is all in aid of helping future and existing recruitment businesses who are looking to do similar things. Now, growth means different things to different people. So by tuning in every week, you're no doubt going to find information that's relevant to you. On this week's episode of the RAG Podcast, I'm joined by Matt Murphy and Rory McGowan. These guys come from Levy Global. And this is a business with 50 heads, headquartered in the UK, but offices in Amsterdam and a new office in Belgium as well. Now, what I loved about this episode is Matt joined the business 22 years ago as a recruiter that worked his way up. 11 years ago, he did the first management buyout to buy out the original founder and take a big shareholding in the business. However, a few years ago, he's completed the final management buyout to take the majority shares of the business. As a result of doing that, he's hired Rory, who's just come in from Opus, as COO, and they're talking about creating Levy 2.0, which is effectively a business now set for scale and a huge wealth creation event. In this episode, we talk about Matt's story as to how he's gone from a top biller to a CEO and now a majority shareholder, and how Rory's left a business where he's managed over 150 people across the world to join a smaller business with a huge growth trajectory. In a world dominated by AI and a lot of uncertainty, these guys bring a crystal clear narrative to what they want to create. They've got an incredibly high value, high profit business that they see going one direction over the next few years. So if you're on the scale and exit path and you want to hear from people that are doing it, that are maybe ahead of you or doing similar things, then you're going to enjoy this episode. Without further ado, Matt, Rory, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to be here.
I know. First thing in the morning, boiling hot weather in London.
Lovely.
Bursting through to get to East London. Appreciate you being on time.
No problem.
I've come from Sheffield and it was a 4 a.m. wake up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not fun. And we were watching a bit of, I don't know if you've seen the TV show, The City Is Ours. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
I've just got into it, so we actually turned that off about midnight. She's not like me. I'm a 10 o'clock bed guy.
Right.
But midnight, up at 4, the Whoop band is telling me I had a 30% recovery. So hopefully I'll last the next hour. Okay.
Yeah, well, we've got a 5-month-old, so I got the 2 a.m. wake up, a 3 a.m. wake up, and I had to abandon into the spare room at one point, being like, I knew it was this first thing. I was like, I could probably do it, actually, being
well, if you want to sleep,
away.
if you want a sleep coach, come to me, because we got 12 months of never getting a sleep, and then we had a sleep coach, and
no way.
Never had a problem since. 12 hours a night.
You'll be getting a message within about 1 second of this.
If anyone's listening and they want a sleep coach, I'm not on commission. She just changed my life. She changed my life, honestly. But we'll get into that. Anyway, guys, I've done you a brief introduction, but I can never do it justice. So, Matt, if you just give us a quick bird's eye view of the business, then we'll go back and start telling some stories.
Yeah, so Levy Global, this is our 25th year in business.
Wow.
Born out of the founder founding the business above a Blockbuster's video shop in St Albans all those years ago.
I love that.
Yeah, and then I joined the business 22 years ago out of a rented Regis room on the outskirts of Amsterdam.
Wow.
So with a laptop and a phone, placing people into banking projects across all the Dutch investment banks.
So how many people were in the business when you joined?
So there was about 7 of us.
And how many are there today?
So there's now 50,
right?
Approximately 50 of us, yeah.
So steady growth. And what locations are you in today?
So we're headquartered out of London, and we've got an office in Amsterdam, on the outskirts of Amsterdam, and we've just opened up a new office in Ghent, in Belgium.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you based here or in Amsterdam?
So I'm based here, but I spent. So I've got 27 years recruitment experience, but 17 of those was spent living and working in Amsterdam.
And you speak Dutch?
I do, yeah.
Wicked.
For my sins.
I've got a funny story about Dutch. I say funny, but I thought it was funny. When I lived in Australia, right, I had this friend of mine, my brother's colleague's partner, long story, but she was Dutch heritage or whatever. And I remember we had a house party and she came round, and I don't know how she got onto it. She was like, yeah, I'm originally Dutch. I'm like, oh, cool. I said, do you speak Dutch? She's like, yeah. I said, fluent? She's like, yeah. I was like, all right. 2 girls from our team at Randstad from Holland were stood 5 minutes away. And I was like, oh, Micah, come. And she comes over and I went, she speaks Dutch. Go. This woman knew nothing. Couldn't speak a single word.
Are you going to do the same thing to Matt?
No.
Do you speak fluent Dutch?
I don't know anything.
Well, your ex-colleague tried me out, didn't she?
Yeah, I know.
Do you have to use it a lot in work?
It's funny, actually. I mean, because I did French at uni and ended up working in Amsterdam and just thought, okay, I knew how to speak French, let's learn another language. So it was easier to learn another language. And obviously, if you're going to live and work in another country, you should learn the language.
Embrace it, 100%.
You should, yeah. I mean, I've got mates who've lived over there for 20 odd years who can say.
But their English is incredible, right? They're one of the best places.
Oh, yeah.
Amsterdam, they sound like, the Dutch accent, but they're so good. Even the way they drop jokes and stuff is like really similar to us. Like they get it.
So there's no incentive for you to actually go and learn Dutch, because if they, in the early days when I was over there, if I spoke Dutch, they'd hear the English accent and speak back to you in English.
Oh, it's frustrating.
So, which is frustrating, but yeah.
So now have you got a Dutch accent as well? Do they know?
A little bit. It's got a bit of an Amsterdam twinge to it.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you ever do what like Steve McLaren did? Go a bit Dutch with your English. We share a special morning. Joey Barton. Do you ever remember Joey Barton?
No, yeah.
When he went to France.
So good.
He's like,
he was so good.
Oh, well, my ex was Turkish, so I learned that for 6 years. I was nowhere near fluent, but I was good. I'm quite dangerous in a restaurant. I can order things and I can sound. My accent is good. Yeah. So I always throw the odd line, and I throw these words in that you probably wouldn't know unless you were like, and so they always hit me with like ridiculously quick responses, right. And then I just look like an idiot.
You're like, I'm out.
I'm like, I've got this one phrase where I'm like, look, I don't really understand as much as I sound like I do, so chill out and slow down.
You've hit my limit very quickly.
At least you made the effort though. That's the main thing.
I had to do a speech at my wedding.
In Turkish? Brilliant.
Wow.
So it wasn't like a long one, but it was like 300 people, welcoming everyone and talking through a bit of a story. Yeah. I think I got it about 90% right, and then I couldn't. Don't put me on the spot now, but I could definitely do it again.
Brownie points for the in-laws.
Well, we got divorced here. So it didn't fucking work very well.
So he did his job.
It didn't work very well. The funny thing is, I married a Turkish girl in England, and then I married an English girl in Turkey. So you don't know many people who've done that. Anyway, and Rory, you're relatively new to the business, so just give us a quick, fast. I'm talking like a couple of minute overview of you and why and when you joined.
Yeah, so I joined 3rd of March. Yeah, so like literally just over a couple of months, right? So it's been like really rapid. So I'd been 8.5 years at Opus Talent Solutions. Was kind of on that journey of massive growth that we did, and we were obviously kind of invested in by a private equity partner. So Matt really kind of like, we started conversations maybe last summer, and was basically like, Matt had carried out an MBO, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later. Wanted to put into a real kind of like focus now for the next few years, investment, new offices, going on that kind of multi-brand, multi-office model. I was obviously really familiar for that, but I loved kind of the stage of the business was at, and felt it was an exciting move. I'd been there 8.5 years and just felt like, right, there's a lot of exciting.
So what was your
change.
actual job at Opus at the end?
Group MD for UK and Europe. So I was like at its kind of peak. We were like 150 people, 5 offices, tech, energy, perm contract.
Who were you reporting into at the end?
The CEO.
Right.
I've reported into CEO for the last.
So what's it like? Again, we're going a bit off topic here, but what's it like genuinely handing in your notice when you are responsible for such a big
massive,
part
like
of the business?
massive, like I'd obviously I joined Opus when we were like circa 100 people. At one stage we got up to like 450 people worldwide, so you build so many relationships, both kind of above you, below you. So it's a massive move. I also was doing it at the same time as my wife was quite heavily pregnant. So it's obviously a big move. Huge decision really. Did actually end up going on gardening leave / paternity leave about the same day as my wife went on maternity leave. So it worked out unbelievably well from that perspective. But
so how long did you have out before
3
you joined?
months.
Right.
Yeah,
so that was
3
quite
months.
nice.
It was amazing.
First 3 months of you.
Do you know what? It was actually amazing, like from a kind of a family perspective, to spend time with like my little girl Darcy, my wife Esther. Amazing. But actually, even just to reflect on a kind of a crazy 8.5 years that we had there. It was a very full-on business. I did so much.
So was it December the 1st you
like the end of November 28th, I think was my last day.
What an amazing time to be off as well.
It was amazing. Pretty full on. We did host Christmas as well. So we put it like, she was born on the 12th of December, and then we had like my dad coming over from Ireland and stuff. So it was a full on time. It was amazing. But I actually think even just to reflect on what we did well, what we could do differently, come into this role, like Matt was really kind of looking for someone to kind of really own the kind of operational running of the business day to day, and to drive performance across the different teams and so on. So it felt like a really great match. But also, it's a different business, it's a different industry, it's tech, but in a different guise because of the Dutch banking sector. So it's just, it was really nice from that time actually as well, just to even just decompress a little bit and think, right, what impact do I want to make here? How am I going to go about things? And all of those things I think was really important to have that time out. I couldn't have imagined just going straight in.
Again, we're going a bit off topic, but I do think there's kind of two routes in recruitment. And I think one is glamorized more than the other. You know, one is top biller into founder, which is probably the 90% of the people I've had on this show. And then there's that, you know, manager director that has, you know, big responsibility of people. And I remember going through a period in my career where I was like, I didn't know which one I wanted. I was definitely the top biller and I knew I had that bit, but I didn't know if I actually wanted to carry on doing it forever. Probably burnt me out a little bit. And I had this, do you remember when Guardiola had a year out?
Yeah.
And he went off to America and all this stuff. It was around that time when I was like, I kind of pictured that, a bit like you just had, like if you go into that kind of role where you're a manager of people, you can go and do a project for 3 or 4 or 5 years and then have a year out and then do it again. Whereas when you're chained to a desk and you are the biller and you are the face and you are, it's very difficult to or ever get off the treadmill, isn't it? Because like you're so ingrained in customers. Whereas if you're, so I think it's what I wanted to do today was kind of discuss a bit of that, discuss your role, why you've brought Rory in. Because I think there's always more than one way to do this. It's not just one way to be successful in this industry. Before we get to that, let's go back a little bit. So you said you started in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
How many? 22 years ago, did you say?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And when did you complete the MBO?
So the first one was done 11 years ago.
Right.
So to go on from what you were saying, I went overnight from being a top biller to being a CEO. And that was 11 years ago when I did the first MBO.
So tell us why, like, what was the landscape in the business and why did that happen?
So the original founder, excuse me, he tried to scale and grow the business and brought in a whole level of top level directors and leadership team. Cut a long story short, it didn't work out. And then he decided he wanted to get out. He'd been in the business for 25 years. He'd been running Levy for 15 odd years and wanted to get out. So he approached me and said, look, do you want to do an MBO and buy the majority of the shares? So I thought about it for 2 seconds. Uprooted the wife and kids from Amsterdam, from my life in Amsterdam, moved everyone back to the UK. And yeah, like I say, from being a biller to being a CEO was a baptism of fire.
How did you manage to get the money and funding and things to do
yeah,
that?
so it was a combination of different things. There was already cash in the business that we used. There was deferred consideration over a period of 4 years. So basically future profits being paid out to the original founder. Plus we used an invoice discounting facility as well for working capital.
Because it is, like, it's a good move for a founder to do an MBO, I think. Like, if you think about all the trade options and private equity and that, whereas if you can sell to the people in the business.
Yeah, because they know the business.
They know it. And then you get paid out over a period. You might not get the massive hit payday that you would elsewhere, but you get that continuity of payment over a period of time. Was that obviously dependent on performance as well, or not?
Yeah, it was. You know, I had to pay him off, and I just had to maintain the business at what it was.
What did that look like? What was the business like?
So the business was turning over around 15 million. We had about 15 heads at the time. We had.
When you say 15, is that a lot of contract then?
No, that's that's between the UK office and the Amsterdam office.
But is it massively contract turnover?
But it was mainly contract led. Yeah.
So what was the net fee income on that? Would you say?
So the net fee income, it was not shy of $1 million.
Right.
Yeah, so it was a good profitable business. And then one of our biggest customers, British Airways, decided to outsource everything to TCS the month after I took over the business, and we lost 50 contractors in 6 months. But that was a good learning ground for me as well, because it wasn't all plain sailing. I had to deal with terrible things that happened, and so it's good. And and you shouldn't have all your eggs in one basket anyway. So it kind of taught me the principle of let's try and diversify and develop new accounts as well.
Yeah. So you did it all by yourself, that MBO?
Yeah, all by myself. Yeah.
So what was talk us through the reality of going from biller to CEO with.
Well, to be honest with you, because I knew the business inside out, they called me Matt Remington Murphy because I like the company so much I bought it. But because I think that's the best way. It works well because the people that work for the business, such as myself, they know the business inside out. So I was very confident that I was going to grow the business and I was going to take over the business. I knew how to run the business because I saw it being run on a daily basis. The majority of our business was within our Dutch banking clients. and I ran all our Dutch banking clients. So I think, and just me personally, I'm very goal driven and target oriented. So for me, it was, I'd been a business developer / account manager for, at that point, 10, 12 years. So for me, it was an amazing opportunity to step up and do something new, and to actually move, because we've been living in Holland for 17 odd years. So it was an opportunity for myself and my wife and kids to move back to the UK as well.
Did you have the infrastructure in the team to step back in the...
No, not at all. So I spent...
Because that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, so I spent, you talked about getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get here today. I used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get on an EasyJet at 6 o'clock in the morning to fly to Amsterdam, to hire a team of Dutch account managers, hand over all the relationships, go out and present with them and show them the ropes, basically. So I did that for about 5 years.
And how did you have young kids as well?
Yeah, so 3 kids that were quite young at the time.
How do you manage that? Again, I think
I
might be wrong here in what I'm saying, but I think there was a level of acceptance pre-COVID that you just had to go and work, and it was but I think things have changed a bit. But how did you find that impacted your life?
I think it was, the driving force was I had to pay the founder off, so I had no choice. You know, it was do or die, right? And my wife, 100% behind me. She wanted to move back to the UK anyway, so she was happy being back in the UK. Yeah. The kids were quite young anyway, but yeah, it was blood, sweat, and tears, and it was actually doing that EasyJet run every week for 5 years. I built a team in Holland.
So what would you do? Fly out on a Monday and come back on like a Thursday or something?
So I used to do Mondays and Fridays. So I used to do Monday in the UK, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in Holland, and then fly back for the Friday in the UK office. Yeah. And that was pretty much my life for 5 years. But as a result, I built the team in Holland that actually grew the business with our Dutch banking clients in Holland to where it is today.
And did you get to that level of having like a leadership team there with someone that could manage it without you having to fly over?
Yeah. So that's when. So before COVID before COVID came along, I said, look, I can either carry on doing this, or I'm going to have a heart attack in the next year. So I was introduced to our country director because I thought, okay, I need to have local management on site in Amsterdam. So we hired a country director, and that was 5 years ago. And then after the second MBO last year, I just thought, okay, I really need to bolster up the leadership team and take it from good to great. And that's when.
So why did you need a second MBO? Did you not buy all the shares basically in the first round?
Not all of them, no. So, and then I did the second MBO last year in October, and that was to buy another chunk, but also to give me full control of running the business as well.
So the original founder still has shares?
Yeah. Minority.
Yeah.
Small
Does he get involved or?
No, he's completely non-operational.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's got a decent gig then. That's what you want, really, isn't it? If you get to that point in life.
The best job in the business.
Dividends for no. So, in terms of you, like you say, there's an 11-year gap.
Yeah.
Right. So 5 years.
Yeah.
You're going over and over and over. And then pre-COVID, what you got the country director in.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Then we decided to, because basically what happened is we had a few house accounts and we had a few of the employees. It was a bit like the Wild West. There was no local management. So then as soon as we got local management on board with the country director, we then implemented processes and really structured the business as well. And it also gave me time to focus on the UK business and to build and structure that more as well. So it freed up my time because I went from the business developer to being a CEO to managing the UK and Holland completely end to end. So it really freed up my time.
And you paid him out by then as well, the founder, on that first deal.
Yeah. So he'd been paid out by then as well. Yeah.
So how did it go though? Once you stepped back into the UK, it freed up time, but what were the challenges with that? Because it's never
COVID.
Quite.
It was mental. It was
So how long before COVID did you decide to step back and get that director?
It was funny. It wasn't. I didn't actually decide. It was just opportunity. The person came along, and I thought, okay. And actually, it was a combination with the fact that the family was growing up. I needed to be around the family a bit more. I needed to have a bit more work-life balance because my life was Holland and the UK offices. So that's and I was along that journey of making that decision to bring in leadership anyway, and then but then after COVID came along, with COVID and IR35, that really affected our UK business. It didn't drop off the edge of a cliff, but it really, really affected our business. Our Dutch business, we had one of the best years, because all our Dutch banking business clients, all their digital projects still carried on, all their investments still carried on. And now, our UK business has now turned the corner and come back.
How did you find the relationship, though, of getting the balance right, of stepping back and knowing what to give to the country director and where to still... And what mistakes perhaps did you make there? Because I think that's one that a lot of people, when they hire someone in a leadership role, and they've been running the show, they get things wrong, and they either step back too much, they micromanage too much. There's it's getting a balance right.
Yeah, I think you always learn from your lessons as well. So I kind of, when I took over the business, I did really build that team and micromanage the team over in Holland. But I think it needed to be done because these were junior people that joined me, didn't know anything about recruitment, anything about banking, anything about how to deal with clients, develop relationships. So they needed that help. I'm a great believer in giving people autonomy. You shouldn't, and it's actually probably from my years of living in Holland. When we used to place people in Holland into banking clients, they used to turn around to me after a week and go, "Matt, I haven't done any work." I'm like, "It's fine. You're being treated as a professional. Read up on some documentation. You'll get into the job. Don't worry."
This is what contractors.
This is what Dutch clients. Because contractors in the UK, it's a different gravy. You're treated in a different way.
Yeah, you're going to get my money's worth, right?
Yeah. Whereas in Holland, you're really treated as part of the team. You're given freedom and treated as a professional to get on and do your job. And that's instilled in me. I'm the same with my staff, with the leadership team. You can show people the framework, give them the guidelines, and look, I'm here if you need me, and if you need me to go to.
So when you brought the country director in, though, I guess what went well and what didn't go so well with that transition?
I think with the transition came new people, and with new people, you've got to indoctrinate them into your business in the way that you run your business, that you deal with your clients and deal with your candidates and your consultants. So there was a bit of a dip because new people coming in take time to learn and get up to speed. I probably stepped back a bit too much in hindsight. But I'm not one of those people. We joke about it. I'm not one of those people to just go on a golf course and say, right, crack on with it, guys. I'll see you at the next board meeting.
No,
I like to be involved, and I like to even go to client meetings and pitch and coach salespeople. So it's trying to strike that fine balance between giving people autonomy, but also still being involved. And just look, I'm here if you need me, and involve me. Bring me along.
How often did you travel over before COVID hit? What was the plan?
Well, so I was going over it every other week before COVID, and then I didn't go to Amsterdam for about 18 months. And that was really weird walking into the Dutch office after 18 months of like this, Matt's over every week too. We haven't seen him in 18 months.
But did it not teach you that it's not as essential? If you can keep the business running, the business was working well.
Well,
online.
It's an old saying, and it's something that I spit at all the time. But people buy people from people. And our business has been built on long-term relationships, and that's getting in front of clients. That's being with clients, being with your consultants, being with your candidates. We do our quarterly contractor meetup in Amsterdam, and that's so important. Even if some people don't come along, but some do, because it's an opportunity to get together, and you'll get things from a face-to-face meeting that you won't necessarily get from an online meeting. So, but it did teach me the beauty and the greatness of Teams meetings, and the fact that you can actually have more client meetings because of Teams these days.
Yeah.
Still quite a face-to-face market, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
In Holland, in general. Yeah. It's that's been probably a bit of a eye-opener for me, because I think, from my background at Opus, we did have a Dutch office, not as big as the one in Levy, but we did so much in the UK, and I think the UK tech market moved very quickly to barely anyone did face-to-face meetings anymore.
Yeah.
That transition happened really quickly, and it's almost hard to backpedal from that. And we know that you only have to look around London on a Friday, right, to see there's barely anyone in any of the offices. That's quite different in the Netherlands. Like with our clients in Levy, they very much expect that face-to-face contact and still want that. And they're still kind of almost like a traditional style approach.
Yeah.
I hope it stays for most people. I think it's I look at it like the dated, you don't need to be there 4 days a week every week because of the online, but if you can get there once every month or whatever and do like the face-to-face stuff, it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah,
for sure. So, all right, where was the mindset then? To when did you know and why did you want to do the second MBO?
Well, it's always been a desire of mine to really take this business from good to great.
Yeah.
And
what does that mean in your eyes?
So we've got a good business, right? Levy 1.0 is all about 25 years of experience, great legacy Dutch banking relationships, great aviation and financial clients in the UK. And I really wanted to, we've never shouted about what we do as well, which we're beginning to do about now, because we're going on a journey for the next 3 to 5 years, and it's all about scaling, it's all about investment, and it's always been a personal desire of mine to really build a legacy where we can all stand back and everyone can benefit from that and think, look, we've done that, and that was brilliant. It was blood, sweat and tears, but we had some fun along the way, and we did some really good things. And in order to go on that journey, I realised that I needed people, like-minded people, to bring on that journey with me. So, and you should never be the best person in the room, right? So Rory's got a background of scaling businesses across countries, and has an experience of an exit of a potential event as well. And that's that's the direction we're heading as well.
So did you know that before the MBO that you wanted Rory, or was it like MBO first, then bring the...
Do you know, that's a good question. It actually happened during the process, because the process dragged out for quite a while, the MBO.
Was there a symptom to perform a second one? Was it that you didn't have full control, overriding decisions? What was
so I've got a non-exec on my board, David Higgins, who's the founder of Harvey Nash, you know him. And we brought on board, so he joined me 6 years ago, and literally it's been 6 years of change, building, structuring, new ideas, getting me out of my comfort zone. So once we got the country manager on board in Holland, did all the changes. Some people had to leave, unfortunately, or whatever. And they said, right, let's buy out the rest of the shares. I was like, Jesus, I've just been through, we've just been through COVID here. Come on.
What was the rationale for that, though? What was the reason he said that was a good idea?
Because I think he's a non-exec to various other companies, so he's seen founders build, exit. He's seen different scenarios, and just looked at our business and thought, this is what you should be doing. So it's and just like I said before, I'm very goal driven, very target oriented. So it's just a great thing to have to work towards, instead of just trundling along as we've been doing for the last 25 years. Great relationships with our clients, great people working.
But I wouldn't say you've been trundling along if you completed an MBO in year 11. You were flying over for 5 years to pay him out. Like, you weren't trundling along. You were always goal orientated. It just, I think what you're saying is, and I might be wrong, but my interpretation is, there was time for a new goal.
Yeah.
I think I'm like this in my personal life. I've moved. From the age of 18 to 36, I moved on average every 18 months. Because I was like a student, I was a teacher, then I went traveling, then I got into recruitment, and when you're living in London. And I remember moving in with my wife and thinking, I bought a house, I was like, I'm fucking sick of this moving, right? But then, what are we now, 2.5 years into the house, and we're talking about moving to the Middle East. There's always something, and we might not do any of it, or we're going to do a big extension. I'm like, I definitely in every part of my life, I need some form of goal, otherwise I'm like, what am I doing it for? Yeah. So I can relate to that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like David's the kind of stirring the pot, but there's a reason behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And
but buying the shares allowed you. Not only is it a goal to buy the shares, but it then allows you to. Did it allow you to make different level of decisions that you couldn't do before?
So I've got total control now.
Yeah.
So whereas before, my control was limited somewhat, because I can imagine as a founder as well, you're selling your baby to a business developer. You want to retain a certain amount of control, and I get that. So buying another chunk of the shares.
How did that conversation go with him? Was he completely open, or did you need to business develop your way through that process?
It was definitely business development. I used every sales trick in the book. David Higgins was on the journey with me to do that as well. But I think look, we all wanted the same thing. I think underneath it all, the founder wanted to sell off his share, because that's the goal for him. I wanted total control of the company. I'm in a position now where I'm really excited. We're at the beginning of our journey. We've got someone like Rory on board. We've got Belgium, our new office in Belgium opened up at the beginning of this year with a new country director. So I've got lots to be excited about now.
So sorry, I just want to finish getting under the bonnet of that. So what decisions, give me an example of a decision that you might not have been able to make, or what you'd have had to do to make prior to the second MBO.
Selling the business.
So if you wanted to sell in the future, like you say,
I'd have to go through.
Yeah.
You know,
was there any like more routine? Does it, like you say, hiring a Rory or whatever? Would he have to? Would any certain amount of spend or whatever?
Also, it's given me free reign on running the business how I want to run it, and how I want to grow and scale it, and bringing leadership people like Rory on board.
Was there ever a scenario where you wanted something that you didn't get over the line in that period between the MBOs?
That's a good question, actually.
It's more, I just loop in a little bit, not speaking format, but things like to go on that scale journey, like a massive part of that is significant people. If you want to attract really great people in the industry who've maybe been there, done that, been on a journey before, probably you're going to have to give options away, right? To bring people in. And I guess that's maybe
you're either going to take it out yourself, aren't you?
Yeah.
Or you're going to buy the pot.
But in that scenario, like, I think what the latest MBO has allowed Matt to do is actually make that decision himself around, how
I'm just thinking
again,
I'm not doing it to be too overly invasive. It's more for the people listening to maybe go, shit, that's something I didn't think about. So it's like, for example, did you go, I want to do this, and it got knocked back, and you had to say, all right, well, I'll leave that until after? Was there ever scenarios or any symptoms that people could learn from?
No, there wasn't actually, and it's just tying into what Rory is saying. It's all about future actions, So
it was more about the shares, need to achieve.
It's about selling, and it's about bringing senior people on board. That's where the barriers would have been. Yeah.
Okay. Again, it's much smaller scenario, but I remember when I started, so we started Hoxo with 3 people, me, Amma, and a guy called Mark, who was my friend from school. So I've got my best mate from uni and my best mate from school. It was not a good idea. I didn't do the due diligence on Mark's actual business performance. He was a marketer. He was the reason he was the final piece of the puzzle originally. Anyway, it didn't fit the kind of pace of work, and he was in Manchester and we were in London, and then we made him move and he hated it, and it was just... But what we agreed in was, after actually a year and a bit, we knew this wasn't working. We said, well, look, we've all got 33%, but actually, you've openly said you need someone more senior to come in and work above you, so we're going to have to take some of your equity away to be able to give that away. And also, I don't think any of us, we said we don't think any of us deserve necessarily our full shareholding if we're not going to be here. So we're going to go on put a vested agreement in, which meant that we've got 5 years each to earn. I've got 33, Emma's got 33. You've got, I think we agreed 25, and then would there be an 8% that would be for somebody else? And then over a 5-year period. Anyway, within 12 months, he wanted out, and we never brought anyone else in, and we ended up buying him out. But that structure we had to put in place was really powerful. I mean, we ended up paying him way more than the actual vested was worth, because it was just unfair. I didn't expect it a year later. He actually only had 5% of the company at that point, and the profit wasn't particularly high. But I do think it's important for people to think about this stuff, and get in their head clearly where they want to be, and not people give away a lot of shares in the early, when something's worth nothing. It's like, just give it away. Oh yeah, you can have this. You can. I was so open with it, and it comes back to bite it.
Yeah, and I think probably for Matt's scenario, it was kind of the opposite. Like, Levy's always been very cash generative, very profitable, 97% contract business, historic clients. So actually, the value of the business has actually always been quite high in that regard. So I would imagine the founder's viewpoint would have been, this looks like a very solid thing going forward, So, I think I completely know what you're talking about. Like, a lot of people that I'm in my network, I can think of 3 or 4 people that have ended up kind of giving, oh, you can have 20%, come in and grow my contract business or whatever. They don't do a good job, but they now own 20% of the business.
Stuck with shares, It's really serious.
And then Perm had done really well, and now the business is only valuable because of the Perm performance. So I think a lot of this stuff is there's like an education piece, like, which actually is a really important aspect of me coming into the business as well for the management team, because I think one of the interesting things is like growing top line and bottom line. So a lot of people are really great sales leaders in recruitment and can only grow top line.
Yeah.
And have absolutely
They don't even have
no
interest in the bottom line.
And they have no concept.
Is that you, Matt?
Other way around.
Yeah. So I think like, and there's decisions you can make, there's levers you can pull on a daily basis, because absolutely there's no point being only focused on one of those things. Doesn't make sense.
A message from today's episode sponsor, Untapped. Untapped are the market leader and go-to agency for finding and hiring elite offshore talent into the UK, US and Australian-based recruitment agency market. Now, I don't partner with sponsors I don't believe in myself, and Untapped are someone I've personally used to build the team at Hoxo, and it's been a game changer. No one else we've worked with can compete with both the quality of the network and the time to hire, and the impact they've had on our business has been insane. From hiring, from consulting, from advice, they're a premium team that you can trust, and you're guaranteed to access a network of top-tier international talent that could be right for your business. Look, they interview over 3,000 candidates and put them through a 4-stage interview online every single month, and they only represent the top 1%. So you're going to get a thorough service at speed. So if you're looking at international hiring where you're looking at getting up to 70% less in terms of cost for equivalent UK member of staff in both recruitment and back office roles, then it's a complete no-brainer. All right, you're going to love it. So they are currently showing a waiting list for their next cohort of hiring, and it's almost full. If you'd like to join the waiting list, then click on the link in the show notes and take it from there. Good luck.
So let's go into that then. So you said it was in the middle of the MBO, the second MBO that you and David, I imagine, came up with there's a need for someone to come in as a COO. Talk us through that. What was going on? What was the conversation?
Yeah, it was, again, he just planted the seed in my head during the whole MBO negotiations.
Go on, Dave.
He said, shall I look into the market and see if I can speak to people?
He says it in such an eloquent
way. He does. And you go, all right. Go on then.
You can't say no to anything.
And he said, do you fancy if I can look into my network and see if I can meet someone who fancies helping you build, scale, grow and exit? I was like, go on then. But that actually, and from that moment on, and then I spoke to a rec to rec actually, and who did a really good job and introduced me to a few people. So yeah, that was...
So was it that you felt you weren't capable? Was it that you wanted to do something slightly different yourself? Like,
yeah, no, it's a combination of everything. You should always realise what you're good at doing and what you're not good at doing.
Yeah.
I love going out. Business development, it's in my blood. I love going out, winning clients, helping the salespeople, pitching, going and building relationships. That's at the DNA of us as a business as well. What I'm not so good at is the operational side and the management of sales managers and directors, because I just want to get out on the field and get business in.
It sounds exactly like me. I know that I'm not the best, and even how I communicate at times isn't the best. And I used to think it was a real weakness, which perhaps it is, but I'm quite comfortable just leaning into the things I'm good at and I enjoy, and like you say, finding people that will actually enjoy the stuff you don't. Like even Lauren, who organises this, right? She's like it's weird. I've got Lauren's my wife at home and Lauren is my work wife. It's quite confusing, but they both like run the stuff I don't do. But like I literally rock up here and I'm like 10 minutes ago I'm like, oh shit, I didn't tell them that I needed 3 mics. So I'm thinking, you're going to get here, fucking share a mic like you're singing on it. And then she's like, oh no, don't worry, I already told them. It's like, it's those little moments that I know where my weaknesses are. So what was the kind of the job spec you wrote down then before going out to market? High level.
Here's the train set. Oops. So here's the train set. I'm going to off and do more business development and clients and generate and helping the salespeople. But no, it was about the journey. I think it was a big sales pitch. So me meeting various candidates for the COO role was a massive sales pitch. It was about getting them to buy into me, getting them to buy into the business, into the history. There's a lot of CEOs out there in the recruitment industry that are doing great things. But we haven't actually gone out there and shouted about what we do. Rory, you probably didn't hear about us before you met me. So that was.
What was it like in terms of getting candidates at that level?
Yeah.
What was the volume like?
Not great, because a lot of those clients, a lot of people in that role are tied into their businesses. So and that's why it was a big sales pitch, because you have to wrench people away from what they're doing and take them to the window and go, this is what we're going to build in the next 5 years, and you're going to be at the centre of this. So it really was, I sold my arse off to people in the interviews, really. Because I knew that there are other companies out there that are shouting about what they do and whether here, there and everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's really, and this kind of ties into the whole branding bit as well. That's when I realised, right, come on, Matt, we need to tell the world what we're doing, because then things will be easier going forward. Clients will know about us. People want to work for us. Yeah.
No, I talk sense when I talk about branding. All that. So, Rory, paint a picture of where you were then. So, what was going on in Opus? Obviously, I know Amy's recently joined Stephen Bartlett, which is pretty cool. I've had her and Darren on the show in the past. So, what was the land like for you and when you got that rec-to-rec message or call?
Yeah, look, I think when I joined in 2016, like I was given the kind of the brief was almost like, you know, take on our London tech business. I'd come from S3, you know, that was my sweet spot. I was perm kind of business manager. I was given like contract and perm brief. And I guess I joined at a very similar time to Amy. I think she joined like 2 months after me. Right. So I think as the business evolved, so did I. And because of Amy's arrival, Darren had kind of, as you know, had kind of done that classic entrepreneur thing, had put a lot of flags in the sand. We had a lot of different brands. We had a lot of different sectors, but had started, you know, very bravely, opened up Amsterdam, New York. So I think I knew that business had a lot of ambition. And I think Amy probably...
It was on Moorgate, wasn't it? The big office?
Yeah, it was in Moorgate. And yeah, I was kind of just given that brief of like, if you do a great job at London IT, you'll get your role expanded. And as the business expanded, so did mine, and my area kind of expanded. So got exposure to the energy business. Suddenly was running, was running London and Europe for both tech and energy, perm and contract. That massively grew. We absolutely flew post-COVID, both renewables and tech, and we were really well placed in the kind of that digital boom in post-COVID in the UK. Because we'd worked a lot with tech startup scale-up, and I think as well because we were very kind of new business oriented as well. That really suited as that market.
Sorry to interject, but what do you actually do at that level then? So like, what's your job when you've got all these people that are out, and I know they're a sales machine. I know quite a few people who've been in and out of Opus, and it's the classic get on the phone, get in front of people. Like, so, you know, they're very good at what they do. What's your role in that?
I think that's a massive, like I think you've just kind of mentioned that there is like, you create the environment, the framework, the process, the inspiration, the relentless kind of pursuit, tapping into people's goals to actually drive that type of output.
So were you in the office focusing on the humans in that business?
Humans, but then also I was like going over to Amsterdam but also I think COVID really taught me how to manage remotely, and like probably pre-COVID, we'd built the London tech business on heart, on intensity, on the classic. We are strapped in. We started we go for the beers on Thursdays and Fridays and whatever, and it was that whole classic thing. COVID then obviously the light went off, right? And then it was all about systems, processes, connecting tech. And to be honest, I think that was a brilliant one for me. It was like coming out of COVID was like, okay, what actually matters and what doesn't? And I think then being able to hire slightly different people, different leaders that are probably more organized, structured, will get into the detail rather than your kind of classic rah-rah, you know, if we hit this, we'll do this. So look, I think the role is kind of all consuming in that, because in the cadence in that type of business, like we unashamedly, the goal was to grow and scale and be one of the few % of businesses that actually do get that exit right. Darren said that from day one. We all bought into that. We all realized, you know, those of us that had options, we realized that was on the table for us. Amy's background was very much like, you know, from that world as well. So had a really good picture of like what an external investor may be looking at us. So it was really connected to our brand, how things looked, storytelling. So I guess I had a kind of a really front row seat towards what's required internally to drive performance to such a standard that it's interesting to external investors,
Yeah.
but also what are the kind of building blocks around the value drivers that are actually really important, just as important, so that because that
But
ultimately
your role
drives
was
your multiple.
not. You weren't meeting customers, were you? It was all people. And
I looked after it was very internally focused,
Yeah.
but that said, I still had a couple of accounts that were kind of like was the kind of point person on originally. But look, to drive that type of level, you have to, and as I said, it went from being like, ultimately when I went in first, I'd have 20 people. It scaled up. Then it was 70 people across London, Amsterdam. Then I had Bristol,
were you travelling
Manchester.
to Amsterdam a lot as
Yeah, and then Bristol, Manchester, and then we opened up in Barcelona as well. So look, then you've got the different cultural challenges and all of those. So it's all really interesting. And look, I think we were invested in 2021, and so from me being in 2016, 5-year journey was just incredible. Look, I was lucky enough to be one of the 7 senior shareholders that kind of were kind of part of that leveraged back MBO, which again, really fortunate position to be in. And then, I had a few years then kind of post that deal, 2022, we were flying. We know the end of 2022, the market really did go off a cliff edge, in terms of the UK particularly. I think the Liz Truss kind of era is almost synonymous.
Investment in startups dried up.
Exactly.
Massively,
the VC funding dried up. So there were a couple of factors. And then 23 and 24, there was a lot of change. Some really interesting. Again, it's really interesting to see that world, like the level of detail required in a PE world, structure, what's important, what's more important than we may have thought, what's less as important.
Give me an example of what was more important.
Finance, right? Like they are financial professionals.
Yeah.
What they have is a team of expert investors and pools of people that they can involve in. Ultimately, where they're going to be at their strongest is going to be looking at the financial controls internally in the business. I'd say over the years, again, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I guess we always kind of historically made that investment. Let's hire 10 more heads. Let's not do the finance system implementation, And I think if you make those decisions all the time, that's where we had this amazing top line and amazing bottom line at one stage. We'd grew it significantly. Ultimately, you need to do that level of business. At one point, we went up from being, we joined, we were like 12 million or so, 10 million NFI business. We got up to just shy of 50 million. We were a 1 million EBIT business. Our best year was like 11 million, in 2022. So but when you're doing that level of business, particularly the way we did it, where it wasn't necessarily like 10 big accounts, the amount of man hours needed, invoicing, complexity of invoicing, terms, signatories, who does what, chasing. And I think, look, on reflection, that would be the thing I'd absolutely urge anyone who may be thinking of this in 3 years' time, and I'm sure lots of people listening probably are, is try and think of your business was triple the size overnight. Because that would be what we would love to happen, right?
Yeah.
Matt would absolutely love that we just tripled in the next 3 years, right? But almost build your systems for that, so that when you do, you don't topple over.
But again, it doesn't feel like a priority when you're always
and
sales.
having seen the other side of that as the market tightens, where we were kind of I don't think that financial, I say just sophistication, to be brutally honest. Need of data, how quickly you can look at your cash flow. Again, we had multi-currency, Again, look, these are things that I've seen the last couple of years. The bit Opus has done, a system, finance implementation, CRM implementation, all those things. Because in that world, in that PE world, they're things that they see as absolute rocks. So I'd say that would just be one thing for me, would be nothing's more important than that whole cash flow. Also, if you get a PE investment, which a lot of people don't realize is actually how it works. Ultimately, most PE deals are leveraged back. So it's essentially they will put equity in, but then there's essentially a mortgage for want of a better word, that sits on the new business entity, which is essentially, that includes banking covenants. Look, these are all things like when we did the deal in 2021, I was one of those people that was probably popping champagne.
Did
really
you make
excited.
some money yourself on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So there was probably like 7 of us that did, really well out of that. And then actually there was about 60 odd people in the business that got something, which was really exciting.
Part of the deal.
Of course, yeah. So like, you couldn't take all your money off the table unless you were like leaving the business. Only Darren was in that position that he fully exited, because they essentially, and again, that's probably one for listeners as well to understand that, like, in a scenario, if you're thinking an exit, it's probably more like a financial event will occur, and ultimately the leadership team will probably be out the other side and actually still part of that new marriage. So, you'll get maybe an opportunity to take, I don't know, call it 50-50 cash off the table of what your old shares were worth on day one, and then the big carrot will probably be in that second event.
So how long was your period to stay? Was it till the point?
No, it would be point of exit. So I actually sit here today still as, like, I'm still a shareholder in Opus. So, like, because of my original investment is still in the business.
So that wasn't taken away from you?
No, because you like, again, all these deals are so different and bespoke. But like in our type of deal was more like, you would have shares in the new entity and then, some other kind of carrots on top. It wasn't like an earn out period, which I know might be more common. Actually, I think the deal we did is more common with PE, whereas I think in trade, a lot of trade deals are more, there might be an earn out for the next 3 years.
Again, what was going on in your mind that made you entertain the conversation?
Do you know, I think like it had been a really tough couple of years. Like it'd been tough for the industry. It'd been really tough for us. We'd come down from this mega high, like a lot of changes. You mentioned someone like Amy. A lot of people that were in my peer group. Of that original 7, there was only me and one other person still in the business at that point. When I got the call in the summer. And then actually from a personal perspective, my wife at that point was like a few months pregnant. And I think, look, you know yourself, like things like that, they do change. They change your kind of like future viewpoint. And look, I've obviously, the huge decision you mentioned about walking away and shareholders agreements. I had very restrictive covenants. So, I didn't know even where I could go if I could. And, there was a really nice, like, look in the sense that Matt's business was so like Dutch focused, banking clients focused, was very clearly not like nobody at Opus would have heard of Levy, right? So that was including me when we first spoke, no offense. But like I think that's almost like the perfect size. Like,
so was it an instant message, I'll have a chat, or
no, not at all. Like it was, I've been to kind of go on that journey, you gotta be all in, right? Yeah, cool. And I had, I would have bled Opus over that period, and we built that kind of environment that people care as much of cult. Yeah, like the people care as much as the person who owns it, And I think we, so it was a massive decision to even take the meeting. I'm also not someone to mess someone around, so I actually said to Director Rec to say to Matt, I'll have a chat, but I'm like, what's more passive than passive? I'm extremely tied in. I don't know if I'm even open to moving, but I think I was, and actually my wife was quite like, look, like maybe this could be exciting timing to just kind of maybe get off the Opus train. Like I was like August, wasn't it?
Yeah, last
year. Was it face to face or?
Yeah, August.
Yeah. Where did you meet?
At our offices in Farringdon.
Right.
Yeah.
And you just put your BD out on them.
To be fair, that first meeting was quite
I did,
general, wasn't it?
But I walked away from the first meeting and I was saying to the Rectorate, but hang on a minute, he's got shares in his current business. Why is he going to walk away? Have you wasted my time here?
Yeah, right.
So, but it took time. I think that was good though, because you went away for a couple of weeks, didn't you? And you
went on holidays. Yeah. I went on holidays, and I was just a bit like, the size of the business was interesting. Like when I first got the call, I was a bit like, is this a little bit too small? Like, 50 heads. But then when I got into the business, I was like, oh, it's actually like, 1.5 million EBIT business.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know from Opus, that was like pretty similar to the starting point that, I walked into the business. Really profitable, very contract led, tier 1 banking clients. But then interestingly from the chat with Matt was like, maybe the things that you didn't like doing, were very much something I've been doing, like, directors and MDs and team leads and running that type of scale, I guess, takes operational processes, intensity, but detail and all that kind of stuff. So I was a bit like, and the business doesn't do very much perm either, which Opus was quite 50-50 split. Yeah. So again, I was like, no, that's such a massive opportunity to layer both. But like, you want to have a contract leaning, but we probably want to redress that.
Yeah, more like 25%.
Exactly, exactly. That would be, I think, a really good goal for us for the next few years. So it was a bit like reflecting on it, being like, and then like the size was actually really good because it was profitable, cash generative, really great. Really liked our DFDs, kind of ex-S3. David Higgins, ex-Harvey Nash is involved. I really got on with Matt. We had lots of weird, in the second meeting, it kind of came out. We had loads of these weird things in common. So one, Matt Murphy, Matt's obviously kind of like second generation, your parents were from Ireland and had moved over here. Your dad had gone to like Trinity College. Yep. That's where I went to uni. Really? You'd done a year in France on Erasmus, so did I. Matt's 10 years older, so we're basically like, and kind of...
you wouldn't think it.
But I just think it's like, there were loads of those little things that, you kind of talk through. And I guess when I reflected on the second meeting, I was like, do you know what? The challenges, so to speak, are kind of things that I kind of do on a daily basis, like building performance and managing people, scaling, all that kind of stuff. And then the stuff you were talking about doing on the horizon, I felt I could tie in a lot of the journey that we'd already been on. So I knew it'd be a different role for me, not just being sales focused. Like, let's put in building blocks like L&D, for example. How will we bring that to life? I know that being a massive part of our growth. Was having a really great scalable model that, this is how we do it here almost. And then ultimately as well, a lot of the things that I saw the likes of Amy doing, about our brand and repositioning, making decisions internally that are also compelling externally and all of that side. And I felt that was really exciting for me to maybe help Matt and the leadership team with kind of how do we make decisions today that we're not going to be kind of reflecting on in a few years, that's closed any door or doesn't make sense, again, growing top line and bottom line. So yeah, like as I kind of came away from the second meeting, I think we ended up supposedly going in for an hour. I think we were together for 3 hours, and literally by the end, we were kind of whiteboarding because Matt was almost going, here's my current challenges. And I was like, oh, do you know what we could, what we could do is this, and this. And I think we walked away a little bit like that.
And you both went like, this fits.
There's chemistry, yeah.
And again, I know so many people like you, right, that are good, great billers. They found businesses, rarely buy businesses, but found businesses, and they get to a point where they hit a stagnation because they don't have a Rory. They don't have that person to even bounce off, never mind do the bits they don't want to do and actually be way better than them at those parts of the
absolutely.
job. So what's been the first 2 months like? Let's paint the picture of what you've actually done.
Yeah, I think you described me as a tsunami that's washed over every part of the business, which I took as a positive thing. And you've covered a lot of ground quickly. No, I think it's been awesome. It's actually been awesome for me, because some of the things that aren't in place, like again, it's been like almost going back in time. Like in the London office, I feel like I'm like team leader, director, hands-on with those guys, because again, instead of having layers of people doing it, and I love that stuff. I love the in essence, I love the life-changing opportunities this job affords if you can get your own kind of mindset up to a certain level, and then you apply the process that we know work in a kind of uniform manner consistently, you've got a great chance of success.
It's not overly complicated, is it?
It's not, but actually tapping into people and then instilling those processes is the hard bit. So that's been great. But then I've also been kind of like doing things like this, Sean, you know, trying to get our brand out. Like, you know, I was on a different podcast as well, but like putting in,
you've cheated.
I've cheated already. Yeah.
I thought I was the only one.
Yeah. So like, but also like reconnecting my network, looking at what other people are doing, the challenges posed by AI tools have like kicked on so much in the last 6 months in RecTech, I think. Tech enablement, understanding the business as well. I did a one-on-one with every single person in the business, which started with, what's your why? Why are you here ultimately? Why do you get up in the morning? And then also, if you were CEO for the day, what was the one thing you would change? So I literally had that with the most junior person to someone who'd been in the business a very long time.
The data, because again, you can't change that much in 2 months, I imagine, but you can get that picture.
You'd be surprised, Sean. You'd be surprised.
No. But again, like even RecTech, it's all about a strategy, I imagine, right now.
Yeah. So I almost like. So I did that, and I basically kind of put together like observations and tried to put them into kind of brackets, you know, like brand, performance, leadership, incentives, you know, try and give them in groupings around, here's ideas, here's the feedback, here's what the people want more of. Communication, a big one. You know, I think that's something I know is so important if you want to get people on the journey. Here's where we are, where are we heading, here's what we're doing. And there were a couple of things immediately like I could bring up in my first kind of monthly town hall, etc., to be able to just go, guys, a lot of people said to me they'd rather more of a like monthly incentive approach, you know, rather than quarterly. We were able to do that. And I think that was a real attractive thing for me, Sean, as well. It's like probably coming away from which people need to be understanding of, if you end up in a kind of a PE structure, ultimately some of the things that would have sat with you and the management team to make those decisions, you know, have to go through a much more rigorous approval process, which can be limiting, you know, and time is a factor. We know recruitment's a very fast moving sport, right? And, you know, if I'm talking to you and you're really deserving of a pay rise, you know at Levy, I can turn around and be like, I've just given Matt a pay rise, you know, or I've given this person who really deserves, they're doing X, Y, and Z. Obviously nothing ridiculous, not Saudi money, but you know, like kind of fair things. And that was really attractive for me, was being able to make those decisions quickly. But look, I think there's been, with that information, I presented back to Matt after 6 weeks of being like, here's everything that I've got so far. Here's the anecdotal stuff. Here's the stuff that like people have said. And in everything that was kind of a challenge, I put the idea that someone had put, but then I also thought like what my action would be around that. So it's a great way of us staying accountable on this stuff as well.
So talk me through how that was receiving it from your
end. Good. It was, you know, it was, what's really important, I think, is, and what I'm really excited about is the whole combination of Levy 1.0 and Levy 2.0. So Levy 1.0 is all about our long-term strong relationships with clients, and a fantastic key account management model with a brilliant 180 delivery model. That's what we've been about. Rory's background is 360, how to generate new clients and new business out of the 360 approach. So for me, I'm just really excited. So when we sit down and we talk about his findings and about, you know, and it's just a great meeting of minds where, you know, I can talk about what we're doing well, and Rory can come in and say, well, you're doing that bit well, but we need to do this as well. So yeah, I think it's what I've been waiting for. You know, it's the reason why I brought Rory on board.
So how do you find, or what is on a high level, what are the key priorities? And let's start with that 360, 180 model. What changes are you hoping to make?
I think
and what impact will it have?
I think like in a short, I think I've come from that background, both S3s and Opus, right? That the challenge was getting more than ones and twos in your clients, and actually sometimes that like. What makes you great to open the door can sometimes be those instincts are the problem once you're in the door the door, because you have multiple people from multiple offices going in with their vertical market approach, and they're like, please stop emailing me, I'm working with blah blah blah. The amount of emails we used to have to send now, and like being like, that's someone else's, please stay away, and you know, we'd get a complaint. And that's because it's hard to manage as well, like systemically when you've got so many people going out in a tight market. And it also showed we were on top of things, you know, but that was the challenge, was how do you bring more clients onto those, you know, 10, 20, 50 runner accounts. Levy's almost the opposite in terms of the setup's amazing, and like there's 3 of the Dutch banks. We're talking about like 7-figure accounts for us. We've got 3 of those, which is amazing, right? And they're clients for 20 years. So again, there is amazing things I've seen since I've been in. So my findings aren't just.
But my question is, what are you going to do, and what changes are you going to make to improve without breaking what's already there?
Yeah, so I think the marrying the both has been the really interesting thing. So it's not to come in here and turn Levy into an Opus, right? Because it's not possible. I don't even think it's fit for purpose. Doesn't make sense. So the idea is almost, how do we bring a new business identity? So what are the compelling things we can do? How do we position people that actually open the doors vertically, so then we can apply the account management model horizontally?
And is it about new people that
It's
only
both.
do that? Or
I
is
think
it
it's
about
both.
getting the existing...
It's actually both. I'm really glad you asked that. Like, I think it's a massive combination of both, because there's a bit of a cultural thing here.
Yeah.
It's getting, even your 180 delivery people, we've got to be thinking about market insights from those candidates. Who's hiring, where, like, do we understand the external market? The people who are 270 account managers have to be almost like managing those accounts with a mindset of, what if this account stopped hiring? So they need to be constantly thinking of using their kind of current market knowledge that they're getting from those accounts and thinking, which other account could be a really great fit for me to be opening.
But then they probably won't know what to do at that point.
And we've also L&D support. So again, we're going to go on a massive project of, like, we've got to bring in, we've hired a new business director in Holland. So from that background, I'm hiring for a new UK director. The person that was in situ left about a few weeks before I started, but that person, has to have not necessarily to do the UK market, but to have a new business approach, but based in London, will definitely come from that background. And then we've got to hire some 360 people who come into the business who've got that skill set, because I think as well, if people aren't seeing it, it's hard for them to believe that it's possible. Yeah. Whereas,
what's the trick? Again, I can only go back because I was in a 360, always in a 360, and as I was leaving Venquis, where we had Munich, Rotterdam, and London, so it wasn't that different. They actually shut the Rotterdam office the day I quit, because the guy who went over to open it, Jack Grimes, was the only guy who could replace me, basically. So I know they'd had 2 people who, like, their wives had quit their jobs and everything to go and move there, and I was like, fuck, but did it anyway. So where's the sweet spot from a 360 to 180 model, where, like, how many deals do you put into an account before it becomes an account managed account, and you have to give that away? Because that'll always be an argument that I want to hold on to that now, because I've built it and I'm doing deals in it. But for the business, and as you say, the skills to get the account to 10 deals, for example, aren't necessarily the one to get to 100. Have you got like a sweet spot?
I actually think, like, I was chatting with this yesterday to someone internally in the business that almost has an account management title and is applying it to accounts that I don't think are worthy of being an account.
Yeah.
So that's almost like someone having the title and applying it to the business. What do you think is worthy then? Where's the line? I think it's scale. I think it's like scale, like size of business, the genuine complexity that's needed. And we have that. The great thing here is, like, we have the template in those Dutch investment banks of the
Is there a minimum expectation or trigger, like they spend X, or is there something that you can measure as an arbitrary line and go, they're not quite at that level, or they're above that level?
I've always been of the opinion that if a client is spending 1 million on you, then they're a decent client. Yeah, and that's a client that's worthy of generating relationships and building out even further.
Yeah, building a team to focus on.
Yeah, which usually equates to about 10 contractors, but yeah, that's how I've always looked at things.
So 10 runners out within an account, it's worth looking at.
But it's got to have the potential to go from 10 to 20 to 30 to 40. Mm-hmm. So you've got to look at the size of the client, the kind of industry it's in. Does it fit in with our business model as well? Yeah.
How many Dutch banks are there that you could have great relations with?
Yeah,
surely it's not an infinite.
There's loads. There's loads. Yeah. We don't just deal with 3. We've got a lot of asset managers, insurance companies, retail, FMCG companies that we deal with.
Also, like hedge funds, PE businesses. Yeah. So there's like broader financial services.
What do you recruit for them? What is there specific disciplines?
Top to bottom, really. Yeah, and we've got our delivery teams are split into niches. So basically, we've got a single point of contact, which is our account management model, and then behind our account management sits delivery teams that specialise in niches, whether it be data, whether it be finance and risk, and those requirements.
For example, an insurance company, I used to recruit for the Lloyd's of London insurance market. So, you've got underwriters, you've got the business, you've got brokers, you've got your claims, and then you've got your operations, and you've got your transformation. We just did the transformation bit. Yeah. Would you try and do all of it?
Yeah, it's mostly within transformation, so projects.
Yeah.
So we deliver people to projects for the Dutch banks or Dutch companies.
It's very similar to what we used to do.
Yeah, but it's really skill set is A to Z.
So we would slice it. You were only asset management, and then within that you'd have your team of business analysis, project management, like underneath you, and then we were only Lloyd's of London Insurance, and then there was only a retail, and there were only public sector. Yeah, because we found the candidate flow wasn't transferable. Like you couldn't just because someone was a project manager, if they'd not done it in insurance. Yeah, very hard to move like a banking PM to an insurance company. Just didn't. I don't know if it's changed, but back then it was.
We're kind of doing that anyway. It's kind of 360 in disguise in some ways, because the delivery teams, all day, every day, week in, week out, they're looking for a data engineer for a bank. So that is a vertical. Yeah. So,
what is the journey? So if between you guys, I don't know who to direct the question at now because you're both part of it. But what if we were going to say someone's watching this and they might be interested in working for you guys? What are they going to be a part of? Where are we headed?
Yeah, I mean the Levy 2.0 is all about scale and investment. Now I've done the MBO, I've got full control of the business. So the sky is the limit. We really want to build upon what we've been good at over the last 25 years and take it from good to great. Yeah. Like I said, our kind of DNA within the organisation is autonomy, giving people autonomy to come in and build what they can and what they want to build. It's all about setting up a new country location, which I've always wanted to do. So setting up an office in Belgium is a massive thing for us. And that's also to get into engineering and construction industry, which we're not in. We just predominantly do tech. We're setting up a sister brand in London to target the UK RPO market, or provide an RPO service to the UK market. We're bringing in new leadership people such as Rory. So we're going for it for the next 3 to 5 years, where there's going to be a potential event where the senior people within the business can benefit from that. And like I said before, it's going to be blood, sweat and tears, but we are going to have a ball, and we're all going to do well out of it. Career opportunities are going to flourish for everyone. We're going to create different teams, different directors, different countries. The US is a major building block of our strategy as well. So it's all about scale, investment, and bringing like-minded people on the journey with us.
I'd probably layer into that because I guess when you say if someone's listening and they might be keen to join, I guess I was one of those people when I joined Opus, where it's a bit like you knew the ambition was there, and you almost have to put your money where your mouth is, because I think unless you, potentially for Matt, unless he's hired me, opened in Belgium and did open this sister brand to target the RPO market, someone could say, well, you say you're going to do it, but are you doing it? Whereas I know I'd already looked at Opus being like, well, they've already put their money where their mouth is. They've opened New York, they've opened Sydney, they've opened Amsterdam. We're looking to grow, we're looking to scale. And I think it's actually true, like judge people on what you do, not what you say you're going to do is a pretty good mantra. I think you've absolutely only done this MBO really to allow yourself to be able to actually give shares away to tie in people to then go on a journey, right? Yeah. Why would you do that if you weren't keen to do an event? That would be kind of silly to do. So I think for someone who's going to come into our business, they're going to get a very unique experience. And I know this from feedback I've been getting from like Rec2X on people that are interested in joining. I think the fact that we're very cash rich, like actually a stable cash flow actually in the bank at the moment. We don't have big loan facilities. We've always been really cash generative, already very strong contract background everywhere. Gives the business a very strong financial footing, which I know people are worried about. In the industry, we know the last couple of years it's been pretty chaotic. And then I think there's a really nice, sell here is that I know I actually met someone yesterday who's a kind of director level candidate, older than myself, but hadn't had that exposure to the business of recruitment.
Yeah.
So I had ran teams, scale teams, won awards, but actually didn't actually understand the flow through of how do you make up a profitable recruitment business. So the feedback I've been getting is that a lot of people are like really craving that. And I think the fact that, I've been lucky enough to have that experience, I think whoever does come on now, like our MD in Belgium, by the way, used to run a business. She was the MD in a part of the Ambitious group. They had 250 contractors out. Her team did. So we're getting some really top people. So I think what people will get is the autonomy as well to actually get their strategy. We don't want someone to come in and just execute our plan. We want someone who comes in who goes, look, I've got an amazing plan that we could be based in the UK, cover the European markets, and then have a pick a market identity that will give us a foothold into the States potentially. I'm really interested. I'm all ears. And then layering into that, Sean, I think we need people who are like open to the fact that, and you've touched on it a couple of times on podcasts, but also on LinkedIn, right? If you're still thinking you're going to be bringing in 20 grads a month and just fire them up and let them off into the market at the moment and think that an investor is going to be really compelled by that in 3 years, I think you may be like, you're living in the past, right? Mm-hmm. So like, what's attractive here is like thinking about even just today, tech enablement via AI, where it's going to be in 3 years' time. How do you lean in a profitable way? How do you grow in a scalable manner that's compelling and client-centric? And that is the thing that really attracted me about Levy, was those historic clients, that there's a general view of client centricity that, I haven't actually seen before. So I think it's going to be an interesting, for anyone who joins us, I think in the next few years, are going to really get that, maybe that feeling that like I got from 2016 to 2021 at Opus, where you're kind of like, where it is like exciting.
I'm ring my business, I'm out.
It's exciting though, and I think someone who comes in from a business that's probably, as I was, at S3, was trained really well as a sales leader, building teams, and then you went into the right environment. I think someone's going to get into an environment where they're like, wow, I'm actually trusted, I'm given autonomy, but I mean, I'm within a framework.
The bit that I like, if I'm honest, and I see a lot of this, is you're both all in. Like, I see a lot of people who have got to a point where they're a bit knackered and they bring a Rory in because they want to fucking take a step back, and then you're coming in, and you're coming in and you're like, well, the founder's not, or the major shareholder's not as involved, and so it's a really, as I get the impression, like, it's almost like you're starting again. It's like you're both together, you've got the fresh energy. All right, I've got I've got two final questions, and we're running out of time. So my first final question is, and I don't know if I just want your opinion. What do you think people are going to be buying, or wealth creation events? What does the future recruitment company look like in 3 to 5 years that will be attractive to a buyer? Because I look at a David Higgins and I think the world David scaled and exited in doesn't exist.
Yeah,
and it will not exist. I'm not saying he knows way more than me about this stuff, but I do worry that the kind of NED advisor network that are saying this one fucking strategy to scale, I'm worried it's going to be bullshit in a couple of years and it's going to completely change. So what do you think? And there's no right or wrong answer, but what are you predicting, hoping are going to be the key indicators that are going to be attractive for investment in a few years? Long question, that one.
Yeah, I'll take it as like, I think ultimately, any investor, like if you just think about it, what is the same?
Yeah.
Anyone who buys a business, it wants to know that business has a chance of going on a journey of becoming growing, right? Yeah. So there's absolutely no point. They're not interested in buying a house today. They want to know what it's going to be valued at in the future, right? So I think that the real thing is, like, the mechanics of that are still going to be the same, right? Like profitability, cash generation. So trying to think of the things that are all going to be the same. I think what's different, and I think what's going to be essential, is that you can show that you are way more tech enabled than before. You can do it it'll be a positive to say, we've only got one person in our finance team because we've got a finance system that is so impressive and so clued in. It will not be a positive to say, we've got 50 people in our London office and our model is we lose 25 of them and then hire another, and then we get, that will not be seen as a positive. So I think it's going to be really important that you have really high value people where it's clearly defined that is essential, that is a human touch, and that will be that client facing approach and that relationship, I guess that connectivity approach. Whereas you can show that in all of, even how you deliver it, I think like even not having an outsourcing lens, doing things that are maybe lower value items in lower cost regions, not having huge fixed costs for offices will be a plus, not a, look at our gleaming office, it's in, smack bang in central London, and it's, we're 30 today, but our office is for 60. I think a lot of the things that you thought, and I know this from where we made those decisions, and at the time that was kind of the thing. I think that all those things are going to be really important because ultimately as well, which a lot of people don't realize, when you're competing in a world for investment, unless it's a trade purchase, these companies are also looking at nurseries and property companies and buying, laundromats and et cetera, et cetera. That's who you're competing with. So you got to be cash generative and all of that side of things. So, and apart from that, a compelling, what's the story? Like what's something exciting for them?
So what I took from that, and to summarize, I think the change will be across every part of your business, the productivity per head.
Mm-hmm.
Before, it was a slightly different algorithm, a different model on it. There was probably an expectation of more people required to deliver the same output. That we'd hope in the next few years, and I'm not sure everyone's executed it yet, but like you say, we'll be able to get more out of great people. Not a business without people, but more out of great people.
Yeah.
So then you could still have 200 people, but you'd expect more. You might. I think there's two types of businesses: the businesses that we'll protect and grow headcount, but we expect more, and the businesses that go, we'll shrink headcount to protect what we've got from a revenue perspective. And I think it'll play into those two. Final question for you is, you go back to the guy who took over the business 11 years ago, and he goes from biller to CEO overnight.
Yeah.
What advice do you give him?
The advice I would give him is believe in yourself. You know what you're good at. If you've taken over the business and you already work for the business, you should know the business anyway. Otherwise, the founder wouldn't sell it to you. So I think you've really just got to believe in yourself. You've got to keep focused on keeping the business going. So the clients are the ones that pay the bills, right? So look after your clients, and train your people to look after your clients, and everything else will fall into place because you'll get business. And then you'll hire people, and then you'll train those people to deliver services to your clients. And then those people that you hire will have great career opportunities, great earnings potential. We've transformed the lives, and I know it sounds like a cliche, but we have transformed the lives of people within the business because we've brought them into key accounts that we've been doing business with 20 years, and they've had a chance to learn, grow as people. So believe in yourself, believe in the business, and believe in the people that work for the business, and everything else will fall into place. And don't take your eye off the ball. Don't go on the golf course. Don't think, do you know what, we had a great quarter, I'm going to take a 3-week holiday. Be involved in the business, and it's a nice problem to have if you're still in the business and the business is growing and doing well. It's a problem if you're outside of the business, from the outside looking in, and revenues are going down, because then it would take you a while to transition back into the business, to fix it, to bring it back up to speed again. And just if you think you can do something, just say yes and learn how to do it later on. That's basically what I did.
Yeah, I think that's my life mantra.
Yeah.
Figure it out while you build the bike while you're riding it. Right?
Yeah.
Guys, thanks so much. I really enjoyed this episode. It's nice to get a completely we've almost spoke about 2 different businesses. You clearly got 2 different ways of working, 2 different experiences put together. I can see the natural fit, and I'm super excited to see where you guys go. I want you on again in the future, probably in the next couple of years, to see if, I reckon he'll be bold. And
I'll have a hair transplant.
Yeah, you'll got
I'll have a ponytail.
You'll come back from Turkey like Steven Seagal, and he'll be bold as a man. No, I'm really looking forward to getting you on and seeing the journey that you go on, all right?
Awesome. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for having us.
Top man. Thank you as always for listening to today's show. I truly hope that you got value from it. Honestly, it's the only reason I take time every week to ensure that my audience, you guys, future and existing recruitment owners, you're learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. And today's episode is brought to you by my business, Hoxo. I'm the CEO and founder, and we're on a mission to help brand recruitment agencies and their people better. I want to help people have the tools to stand out in the most competitive markets in the world. So I'll see you again next week with another episode. Catch you soon.